6:07 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on in. It is Monday, November 13th. Man, so much going on. Tim Scott has suspended his presidential campaign. And, you know, one of the things that I thought was interesting is what he had to say on the way out the door. Because for Tim Scott, you know, this is a guy who has what I would say is a very idyllic look at America. And he really, really wants all of us to be united. And he made the announcement late last night on Fox News. Now, here's the thing, is I'm going to get into some of the things that Tim Scott said. I really don't think it matters him deciding to suspend his presidential campaign because he was, I believe, dead last. And so there really wasn't a lot of chance for Tim Scott to become the nominee for the Republicans. But I think that what he said about America during this interview with Trey Gowdy on Fox News, I think that does bear a conversation. This is Tim Scott last night. Apparently, by the way, he hadn't even told his staff that he was dropping out when he unloaded on Trey Gowdy.
But when I go back to Iowa, it will not be as a presidential candidate. I am suspending my campaign. I think the voters who are the most remarkable people on the planet have been really clear that they're telling me not now, Tim. I don't think they're saying, Trey, no, but I do think they're saying not now. And so I'm going to respect the voters, and I'm going to hold on and keep working really hard and look forward to another opportunity.
So one of the things that I thought was funny about this interview is that Trey Gowdy, he was really surprised by this. And I didn't really understand why he was so surprised, but he was. And he said a couple of different times, I'm trying to process this on live TV, because it would appear that even Trey Gowdy had no idea what Tim Scott was about to say.
You are suspending your presidential campaign. You have plenty of money. You have the highest approval numbers of any candidate that is running, and you're a couple of states away from coming to a state where you are beloved, and you are suspending your presidential campaign.
Awkward silence here.
You know, Romans 8:28, such an important scripture. It says that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. I think the message is clear for me right now. I am indeed suspending the campaign, but I am going to remain as committed to making sure that this country chooses the right person.
So 538 had his approval rating at 25.5%, his favorable rating at 20, his unfavorable rating at 26.2, his favorable rating at 25.5. And that's fine, I suppose. I don't really live in that world of favorable rating versus approval rating versus, you know, who would win in the general election, in the primary, so on and so forth. Here's what I know. That when it came down to who you would vote for, people were not going to vote for Tim Scott. And so I don't understand. I mean, Trey Gowdy's a really smart guy. So it was clear that Tim Scott dead last in the polling, and people liked Tim Scott. People thought that he was overall a good guy, and they probably, quite frankly, liked his policies as well. But he was even lower than Chris Christie in some of the polling. So people liked him. They just simply were not going to vote for him. And I think the point is that he did have a bunch of money, but he was still not resonating. He didn't do all that great in the Republican primary debates as well. So there's a lot to say about Tim Scott and what he had to say during this Fox News interview. And you listen to Tim Scott, and he never really gave me a reason to vote for him, except that he just kept talking about unity and how great America is. Well, first of all, I do believe that America is great. But so does every other candidate out there. So there really wasn't anything unique about what he was saying, but there was more. You know, hearing him talk about wanting to unify America. You know, it's one of those things that, hey, look, America is that shining beacon of light and all of this type of stuff. I understand that, and I understand the look of the conversation of uniting. I don't think that's where Americans are right now.
I think what our country is going through right now is a very challenging time. And our goal should be to unite this country and not take advantage of the divisions of this country. And the more time we spend talking about the goodness of America, the more time we spend talking about the future of this America, the more time we spend talking about having faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in our future, the better off we will be as Americans, and the more likely we are to come back together to be that one nation under God.
Look, I hear this, and I think he's right and he's wrong. America is challenged. Most certainly we are challenged. But let me ask you this. How do you unite the country when part of the country wants to take away the candidate your side is hoping will be the nominee? Through, for the most part, I think most people understand, are bogus legal challenges and lawsuits. How do you unite with that side? How do you unite with the other side? Tim Scott, of course, he wants us to unite, but, you know, they've been lying about the southern border all this time and telling us that the border is secure when it's not. My question to Tim Scott would be, how do you unite with the other side that has been gaslighting you for the better part of 3 years? This is not a America is divided problem. This is a one side of the aisle is bat crap crazy problem. And guess what, folks? I don't want to unite with the other side because the other side is crazy. And they lie. They've been lying about the border. A lot of people on the other side are supporting Hamas. They're supporting terrorism as well. They don't support law and order. They don't support the police. And so it's a little hard to unite with that. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that? How do you unite with the other side when that side has been grossly and sickeningly anti-Israel and pro-Hamas? You can't. How do you unite with a side that has impeached your president twice? How do you unite with a side that has called you and your side a bunch of deplorables and, you know, racist and the rest of that nonsense? You can't. Not only do I can't, but I don't want to. I don't want to be united with that side. And so the thing that it feels like for me is that, you know, this country, I feel like, and this is not necessarily popular to say, but I feel like we're kind of at war. The two sides are at war. It is an absolute war of words. And so when Tim Scott speaks, I feel like I understand his need to want to be united, but I just don't know how we do that in today's environment when one side is where they are. And it is so far away from the mainstream, in my opinion, the mainstream of America, that I feel like either Tim Scott is desperate for a message that will connect or he's delusional. And so he drops out. Going through some of the relevant audio, big news today, CNN had it, as well as Fox News. Tim Scott announcing last night he is basically ending his campaign. And as he made this announcement on Fox News, you know, one of the things he was talking about is uniting the country. And I just went through how it feels like an impossibility to unite when we have such differences. But one of the other things that he was asked is, do you endorse any of the other candidates?
I'm going to recommend that the voters study each candidate and their candidacies and frankly, their past and make the best decision for the future of the country. The best way for me to be helpful is to not weigh in on who they should endorse. All
right. So he doesn't endorse anyone. I thought that was interesting. One of the things, and I said this, and I like Tim Scott a lot, and please understand that while I appreciate his message, I love his message. You know, it's not like today's differences. It's not like a difference in taxes, you know, tax rates or, you know, big government versus small government. I mean, the differences between us here in America, they're like the Grand Canyon kind of differences. You know what I'm talking about? So, again, I like Tim Scott. I love his message. I just think it's impractical. And so when I hear him talk about, oh, well, you know, I'm going to work to unite America. Okay. But see, that's why I feel like he wasn't gaining any traction, because I do feel like the two sides are at war. And I do feel like Tim Scott, and it's uncomfortable, I guess, for some people that I'm okay to say it. But here's the thing, is that the reason why Scott wasn't getting any traction, and the reason why Chris Christie isn't getting any traction, is because I feel like Tim Scott would get rolled. He is such a nice guy, quoting Bible scriptures and the rest of that, and that's all great. But I feel like the Democrats would absolutely roll him. Now, the other question is, would he be someone's VP? Because a lot of folks, including yours truly, by the way, said, well, what Tim Scott is doing is he's running for vice president. Here's what he said.
You know, Trey, I'll be honest with you. I ran for president to be president. I believe that I could have taken this country to new heights with great unity on conservative principles. Optimism comes from being tough. The truth is, I don't know how to bring the country better together other than running for president. That's what the Lord put on my heart. I think I was called to run. I was not called to win, but I certainly was called to run. And I'll say this, that being vice president has never been on my to-do list for this campaign, and it's certainly not there now. But I look forward to working hard to make sure that in the future I can continue to win the respect and the admiration of voters, even with the ones who don't agree with me.
Listen, I respect the heck out of Tim Scott. I really do. I think that the message was not strong enough. Think about who's winning right now. It's Donald Trump. Clearly, it's Donald Trump. And if it's not Donald Trump, it is a very tough-sounding Ron DeSantis. Those, to me, and Nikki Haley is also doing quite well. But I just think that for Tim Scott, it was the wrong message at the wrong time. And it's not that I don't want optimism. It's not that I don't want unity. I feel like the Republican Party needs someone a little tougher, and I need someone who I have the absolute confidence is not going to roll under the pressure of the Democrats. And that, to me, is going to be right now, even though I do remain a free agent, right now, that person is Donald Trump. By the way, the last thing I'll say on this, the role of a running mate, he's talking about whether or not he'd become a vice president, a running mate, is that person needs to be part attack dog, right? I mean, he needs to go after the other side. That is part of the, really the defined role of a running mate. I don't think Tim Scott is that guy. But here's the thing. If Donald Trump were to tap him as his running mate, Tim Scott would actually be able to soften the Trump campaign. Because Donald Trump is his own attack dog. Everybody knows that. Man needs absolutely no help in that sense. And so would Tim Scott be a good running mate for Donald Trump? Perhaps he would, for the reasons that I just indicated. He could also, by the way, run as part of that no labels party. Sure, he could do that. But at least to me, I don't think that it'll make much of a difference. By the way, a lot of people chiming in on the super text line, and there's a lot going on the super text line. 0181 says, can you give us an update on Jeb Bush? LOL.